The historically famous King Henry VIII of England was born on June 28, 1491, from his dad, Henry VII, and mother, Elizabeth of York. Henry also had two sisters, Margaret Tudor and Mary Tudor. Henry had an older brother named Arthur Tudor, and since Arthur was the firstborn son of Henry VII, Arthur was supposed to inherit the crown of England. Because Arthur was supposed to be king, he got a much deeper training in royal businesses and got to thoroughly practice and see his traits and responsibility and confidence develop in himself as a leader. As you could imagine, Henry did not receive near the amount of training his brother had received to be king. But Henry could speak multiple languages like English, French, and Latin fluently and had a deep understanding and appreciation of art, music, and especially sports. But in 1502, when Arthur was only 15 years old, he got sick and died of a sudden illness, putting the responsibility of kingship onto Henry, who was only 10 at the time. Henry's teen years were stripped from him and were immediately replaced with strict, rushed royal education with a father he had barely spoken to before Arthur died. Arthur was supposed to marry Catherine of Aragon, who was the daughter of the Spanish King Ferdinand and Queen Isabel, to try to form an alliance between England and Spain against France. When Arthur died, Henry VII arranged for Henry VIII to marry Arthur's widow to keep the alliance he wanted so badly. Henry was unsure about marrying her, but they actually got along quite well and were happily married for 23 years. But Catherine had only produced one surviving female child after many miscarriages, and Henry grew upset with Catherine's inability to produce children, and his eyes began to wander. When the Pope wouldn't let him get his marriage to Catherine annulled, he broke away from the church to form the Protestant Church of England, where he then annulled his marriage and then started pursuing Anne Boleyn. Anne promised the king that she would give him the son that he so desperately wanted, but as the months went on, Anne also realized that she could not produce a son for Henry, and after only 3 years of marriage, to rid himself of Anne, Henry put her on trial for adultery, treason, and bewitching him into marriage. Anne was executed in the Tower of London, and Henry once again found himself a new love interest, Jane Seymour. Jane was truly the perfect woman for Henry, and Henry was head over heels for her. Soon after their marriage in 1536, Jane became pregnant, and Henry did everything he could to make her comfortable. And on October 12, 1537, after 3 days of labor, Jane cemented her place in Henry's affection by delivering a healthy baby boy. But disaster soon struck when a few days later, after her pregnancy, Jane grew ill with childbed fever, and there was nothing Henry could do to save her. When Jane died, Henry was genuinely traumatized and didn't remarry for another 2 years and mourned his sweet Jane. The next woman that caught Henry's eye was Anne of Cleves, who he had only seen in a portrait picture, and when he saw her in real life, Henry was disgusted. She was nothing like the woman that the portrait had depicted. Henry and Anne were only married for a few months before Henry could no longer stand being with her, and she returned home, ending their marriage. The now increasingly bloated king was interested in a young, pretty woman named Catherine Howard. Catherine was very dull-minded and could care less about meddling in court affairs, which Henry enjoyed. Henry and Catherine were happy until 18 months into their marriage, when Henry found out that Catherine had a very sexually active past and that she had committed adultery while married to Henry. When the allegations against Catherine were confirmed as true, Henry broke down and cried. Catherine Howard was then executed on the charges of adultery and incest. Henry wanted a woman who would stay with him to the end of his life, but after 5 wives, he still hadn't found a match, and Henry was now far from what you call an attractive man, and he was growing desperate. The last woman Henry would pursue was Catherine Parr. Henry and Catherine were very fond of each other, but Henry was very unhealthy, so Catherine would have to take care of Henry as one would take care of a sick child. After 5 years of marriage, on January 28, 1547, Henry VIII died, and Catherine was there next to him, just like he had wanted. Henry's rule started out in its prime, but fell into a slow decline caused by his weakening mental state due to his lack of love and a jousting accident he had gotten into while still married to Anne Boleyn. Henry's misfortunes combined with his sad love life caused a cruel ruler who condemned innocent men to death, like the man Thomas Cromwell, who arranged Henry's marriage to Anne of Cleves, whom Henry was disgusted with and blamed Thomas, and so Henry executed him. Henry also passed a bill called the Bill of Attainder, which was passed against Catherine Howard, which made it treason for a woman to marry a king if she had an unchaste reputation. During Henry VIII's reign, it's estimated that around 72,000 people in England were executed, and many were innocent people, but they upset Henry in some way, so to him, those people deserved death. Although Henry's rule was very cruel, he would change England forever by breaking away from the Roman Catholic Church to divorce Catherine of Aragon and turn England Protestant.